Welcome back, everybody. I'm Mr. Bob, and today I have another devlog for my dream game, Arms Race. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, watch the first video, and if you do have any idea what I'm talking about, you're in the right place. So without further ado, let's get straight into some game dev. So I lied, and we actually do have a little bit of further ado to get through because I have, believe it or not, done a little work on the game in between finishing last episode and starting this one. So as you can see by the following screenshots, I've added a lot more cities and mines to the game, and I've also added a few new resources and industries. And, as we all know, with great content additions come great graphical bugs, so I had to fix a few minor UI errors too. Lastly, exports show on the map now, which was a process because I had to implement some spherical geometry functions and also fight Vulcan because of my gross incompetence. But, after all that, Bob prevailed. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's start working on this episode's primary concern, the military system. So if you've been paying attention, you should know by now that Arms Race is supposed to be a real-time strategy game set during the Cold War with a detailed economic and military system. We've already taken care of the economic system for now, and we did add the beginnings of a military system too, but as of right now we still have to poke everything from brigades to their equipment into the game inside the source code, which is obviously not great. So I think the first thing I'd like to do is to be able to supply our virtual soldiers with domestically produced gear, so I'm going to add a special type of industry that produces military equipment, also known as a military factory. So after some major changes to how military equipment data is stored and a lot of standard map madness, we have military factories. As you can see, we can select different types of military gear to produce, and our virtual workers will toil away to meet our production quotas. However, you'll notice that the factory has a very limited capacity, which is a feature, not a design flaw, because factories aren't supposed to be storage dumps. However, we do need to rectify the underlying issue of there is no place to store military gear, so the solution to that, and the next phase of the plan for today's video, is a special type of storage called a military base. Okay, so after skyrocketing the number of lines of code in this game to almost 6,000, we have military bases. Like how military factories are represented in the game code as a special type of industry, military bases are just kind of like a special type of storage, except while military factories behave in pretty much the exact same way as regular industries, the behavior of military bases are actually a little different from regular storages, and you'll see why and how in a second. So if I set up a really simple steel supply chain and set up a military factory to produce rifles, you can see we can export it to a military base. Don't mind these blank squares for now, they'll come in handy later. So if we flip over to the military base now, we can see it fill up with rifles. If you remember what the UI for regular storages looks like, you'll remember that they can store a maximum amount of a type of resource, so like an aggregate storage can store like 40,000 units of ores and stuff like that. Military bases function in a similar way, except they can store all types of military gear, so as pictured, you can have rifles and tanks in the same military base. However, this begs the question of how to find the maximum amount of stuff you can store. You can store way more rifles in the same amount of space as one tank, so storing a flat number of items isn't going to work. A simple way to fix this is to change the storage capacity from stuff stored to something like weight stored, which I'm representing as just the production cost of each piece of gear. Now with that out of the way, you'll remember a few seconds ago when I instructed you, the viewer, to not mind the blank squares in the export menu for military factories. Now you can, because these are actually brigades that you can export to. This is 100% functional, by the way. I just wanted to yap about military bases for a minute. So after copying and pasting pretty much all of the code for brigade exports for military factories over to military bases, we have a totally functional military supply system. You don't even want to know how many crashes I had to fix to get this to work, and you definitely don't want to see the code for this because it's bad, but anyways, I digress. Now, there's still a minor problem with the military. We have a booming military-industrial complex capable of producing any weapons of mass destruction we want, but we can't actually use the military at all. I want to be able to move my troops around, and I want to be able to train new troops instead of relying on the ones I poked into the game inside the game code. There's also the obvious problem of we don't have any manpower in these brigades whatsoever, so I think that might be the first issue we can tackle, because that should be pretty easy. So to get manpower from cities to fielded brigades, we can reuse a lot of the same code that handles getting workers to industries inside cities. Right now I'll hard code a flat 1% conscription law because back then countries were pretty militarized because of heightened tensions in the ongoing arms race, But I do have a more in-depth mechanic in mind for later that'll involve being able to set different conscription laws and being able to mobilize specific amounts of soldiers from specific cities and areas, as to treat population as a real resource instead of just an abstract number that you kind of get in a lot of RTS games. But anyway, with enough yapping, we can see that our brigades do in fact have manpower now, and if we find what cities they're drawing from, we can see that those cities have a deployed manpower and reserve manpower stat added. This is all well and good, so now we can try to get these brigades moving around. Now this actually involves changing the equipment data layout a little bit, as we'll need to know the slowest piece of gear in each brigade to determine its overall speed. And then with that out of the way, we can actually reuse the same spherical linear interpolation code from the logistics overlay to determine where our brigades will be after each tick once we give them a destination. So now we can give our brigades a move order to a specific place, and they'll move towards it. So the last thing I promised for today was being able to train brigades, so I made this dead simple training menu that just shows you all of the types of brigades in the game, and then when you press on one, it'll just spawn one in this random spot in the Midwest, probably a cornfield or something. With all my promises for today fulfilled, it's time to end this installment of Arms Race devlogging. Like the previous episode, this took a lot of time and hard labor, especially because I do not use any form of AI in my work, so all of my terrible code is lovingly and painstakingly handcrafted from scratch. Before we say goodbye, however, I'm going to take a second to address some comments from the last video, because there actually is a last video this time. So thank you, Owen, for this wonderful comment. I agree, I love Bob too. Thank you, Sharky8800, for this very helpful comment. I replied to this, as you can see, but I did add logistic lines, and I will be adding a sort of tech tree later on. You'll see what I have in mind. I think it'll be pretty cool. And finally, thank you, Whalon, for this absolutely insane ball knowledge comment. This is ball about Lost Bob media from like 6 years ago when I was in like middle school or something, so nice blast from the past here. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Make sure to subscribe as to not miss more slop similar to this video, and join the Discord too, as you, yes, you, can help me make this game better if you have any suggestions, questions, concerns, or historical data you want to share. And with that, see you next time.